I ruined someone's life just to feel powerful. How do you apologize when it's too late? The memory I replay isn't the moment I won, it's the look in his eyes when he realized I was enjoying watching him lose everything. I'm Adrian, 38, now a celebrated journalist and media personality, but every article one write is built on the ruins of a life I deliberately and maliciously crushed, all because I needed to feel powerful. The terrible irony is that I achieved everything I ever wanted, only to discover that power built on cruelty is the ultimate form of self-imprisonment. 7 years ago, I was stuck. I was 31, working as an entry-level writer for a middling online magazine, constantly overlooked, constantly frustrated. I was ambitious, talented, and profoundly insecure. Every day felt like a slow death by irrelevance. I watched my peers rise while I treaded water, and the resentment turned into a bitter, toxic wellspring inside me. The target of my fixation, and the symbol of everything I felt denied, was Noah, 34. Noah was a tech wunderkind, the co-founder of a revolutionary green energy startup called EOS Innovations. He was effortlessly successful, charismatic, genuinely brilliant, and universally beloved. We had been classmates in college, briefly friends, but our paths diverged sharply. He got the funding, the accolades, and the cover stories. I got the rejection emails. His success was a constant, glaring mirror reflecting my own stagnant failure. But the resentment wasn't just about professional envy. There was a deeper, nastier humiliation. Back in college, during a critical pitch competition, Noah had gently, publicly, and correctly pointed out a fatal flaw in my presentation, a flaw that cost me the funding and the win. He did it with kindness, but to my fragile ego, it felt like a condescending public execution. From that day on, I didn't just envy Noah, I hated him. I vowed that one day, I would be the one holding the power, and he would be the one falling. My chance came when my editor assigned me a fluff piece on EOS Innovations. I was given access to their inner workings, their staff, and their financial models. I was supposed to write a feel-good profile about the future of green tech. Instead, I saw my opportunity for vengeance. As I dug into the company, I found a minor, technical discrepancy in their early financial reports, a legal gray area regarding the classification of investment versus revenue, common in volatile startups. It was messy, but not criminal. It was nothing, but in my hands, armed with my knowledge of media manipulation and the hunger for my first big headline, it became everything. I didn't report the facts. I began to construct a narrative. I started with anonymous tips, then carefully placed, out-of-context quotes from disgruntled former employees, weaving a web of implied corruption. I took that single, complex technical error and reframed it as systematic, malicious fraud, painting Noah as a deceptive, arrogant charlatan who built his empire on lies. The process of creating that article, The Green Lie, how EOS's founder built a fortune on misleading investors, was exhilarating. It was the first time I felt truly powerful. I controlled the narrative. I held a genius's reputation in my hands, and I could squeeze until it broke. The writing was sharp, relentless, and utterly convincing. It was the best, most destructive piece of journalism I had ever written. I never showed it to Noah beforehand. I wanted the shock, the chaos. I wanted him to wake up to the full, overwhelming force of my revenge. The moment the article went live, the effect was instantaneous and spectacular. EOS Innovations stock plummeted. The media storm was immediate and vast, far bigger than I had even dared to hope. My editor called me a genius. I was promoted to investigative reporter overnight. I had my breakthrough. I had my fame. My final, deliberate act of cruelty was attending the press conference Noah held a week later. I stood in the front row, notebook open, radiating the calm authority of the man who had authored his destruction. Noah, typically so poised, looked shattered. His eyes were red from sleepless nights, his suit looked rumpled, and his usually magnetic confidence was gone. He tried to explain the technicalities, to defend his company's mission, but the media had already tasted blood. They didn't want the truth. They wanted the villain I had created. Then, his eyes met mine. He recognized me instantly, the quiet kid from college he'd once mentored, the one who'd failed his presentation. He saw me, the successful reporter, and in that agonizing moment, he realized who had written the article. He didn't look angry, he looked defeated, and then, slowly, a look of profound, crushing understanding dawned in his eyes. He didn't see an enemy, he saw a ghost of his past, resurrected solely to destroy him. I held his gaze, and instead of feeling pity, I felt a rush of cold, pure, intoxicating power. In that instant, watching the light go out of his eyes, I had my revenge. I had flipped the hierarchy. I was the success, he was the ruined failure. He resigned that day. The company dissolved a month later under regulatory pressure and investor panic. Noah lost everything. His company, his fortune, his reputation. He moved out of the city, disappearing entirely from the public eye. What would you do? Take the power and the fame that came from destroying an innocent person, or confess the malicious intent and walk away from the career you finally achieved? I chose the career. 7 years later, I have it all. I host a national show, I command massive speaking fees, and I have a penthouse that overlooks the skyline. I am everything that 31-year-old Adrian desperately wanted to be. But the success is hollowed out by the memory of Noah's eyes. Every time I stand on a stage, I feel the chill of that cold power I experienced in the press conference. I am addicted to the feeling of control, but that control comes at the price of my own moral clarity. I am terrified that if I stop proving my power, I will shrink back into the insecure, overlooked writer I once was. My guilt doesn't manifest as remorse, it manifests as a constant, gnawing emptiness. I tried to atone in small, anonymous ways, massive charitable donations to environmental causes, writing genuinely ethical, hard-hitting pieces that exposed real corruption. But those acts are just pathetic, futile offerings to a conscience I had already burned to ash. They don't negate the foundational lie of my success. The terrifying realization is this: I ruined No's life not because he deserved it, but because I needed to prove to myself that I was capable of causing that level of destruction. I needed to see that I mattered enough to break someone who was better than me. I spent 2 years discreetly searching for him. Not to apologize. I knew an apology was meaningless against the scale of the damage, but because I needed to know the final tally of the wreckage I caused. I needed to see his face, to feel the proper weight of my betrayal, so I could try to internalize the punishment. I finally found him 3 months ago. He was living in a quiet, rural town, working as a shop teacher at a vocational college. He was teaching kids how to weld and fix engines, his hands covered in grease instead of holding board meeting notes. He looked older, tired, but somehow, at peace. He had rebuilt his life quietly, finding dignity in tangible, honest work. The brilliance was still there, channeled into helping young students. I stood outside the vocational college, hidden in my sleek, rented luxury car. I watched him teach, watched him joke with a student struggling with a spark plug. He was whole, rebuilt from the ruins I left him in. He had survived the destruction of his first life and used the ashes to build a second, more resilient one. I realized I couldn't approach him. An apology from me would only be another ego-driven act, a final attempt to seek absolution and make myself feel better. It would shatter the fragile peace he had built. He didn't need my hollow confession, he needed my permanent, silent absence. I drove away, realizing the most profound, agonizing truth. Noah found redemption by accepting ruin and rebuilding with humility. I, the architect of his suffering, found only a cage built of wealth and fame. I ruined his life just to feel powerful, and now I am eternally sentenced to live with that power, knowing it is a lie. I have everything the world values, but I lost the one thing that matters, the ability to look at myself in the mirror without seeing a monster. How do you apologize when the only possible sincere act of atonement is to accept that you can never be forgiven? And more importantly, do you think I should confess the truth, destroy my career, and give up the life I stole, even if it might shatter Noah's hard-won peace? If this raw emotional story of envy, manipulation, and the corrosive nature of power resonated with you, please hit the like button, share this profound narrative, and subscribe to follow my haunted journey.